Hi, everyone. I'm Sweet Melba. Thanks for joining me on the porch. Today, I wanted to talk about career path. And I don't think it matters where you are age wise in your life, assuming you're working or thinking about working, or you've already had a career and you've retired. I think looking forward and looking back is a benefit of a life well lived. Your career path is one that encompasses the majority of your life in a lot of respects. And so on the Sweet Melba channel, the focus here is on sharing life stories, sharing life lessons, things learned along the way, and reflecting on those experiences in our life with gratitude, with awareness of what we again learned in the process, and also the journey still to come. So that's really the focus of the channel. So I'm glad that you joined me today. And I think sharing stories and insights, lessons learned, is a benefit to everyone, both the person sharing, the people listening, and others contributing to the conversation. So I invite you to share your comments on the video today. I'd love to hear from folks who are watching with their stories as well. My career path story starts really with Baskin Robbins, and it will go through me being a business owner for 20 years as of today. Forward to sharing my story with you today, and I hope you enjoy uh, the information. And again, I hope you share in the comments. So I think one of the earliest things for all of us is what we thought we wanted to be as a kid. And when I look back, what I remember, the first thing I really remember is probably it being about 6 years old. And my mom had told me to go clean my room. And we lived in a two-story house. I went upstairs, I looked at my room, and I was like, I don't want to put all this stuff in the closet or in the drawers or whatnot. It needs to be out, it needs to be seen. And so the thought I had, and I still remember this today, was that I was going to make my room a museum. So I took everything that wasn't out, and I placed everything in its own little spot in my room, on my dresser, on my nightstand, on the floor. But I did make a path from the door to my bed and to the dresser using towels. But everything outside of that towel space were my things set up like a museum. So that's my first memory of maybe what I wanted to do was maybe run a museum. So, and then I'd say probably about maybe 8, 9, 10. My parents probably thought that I was going to run a business of some type. I don't know that I necessarily thought that, but I decided that I could be of service to my fellow classmates in elementary school if I set up a rental program for pencils, erasers, things that they forgot, if they lost their pencil or they lost their eraser. So all of us had little cardboard boxes in our desk that we had all our supplies in it. And I guess I had a lot of extra supplies. So I started renting them out, like with library cards, where you checked out the item, but you had to pay for it. It was not free at my office school supply business. It was like 10 cents, 5, 10 cents. And to this day, my mom still has the letter from my teacher saying that she admired my entrepreneurial skills, I guess, business skills, but that I wasn't going to be allowed to rent out school supplies at school. So I moved on from that. And in, I guess it was junior high, I think. Yeah, started junior high. I started selling candy at school. Now, the school had like a vending machine or whatnot, but it was expensive for us kids to get that. And so I thought, when I'd go to the store, I'd see that the Jolly Roger sticks and the Snickers and the candy bars were cheaper than what they were charging us at school. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to buy them at the store and then I'll sell them at school. So I did that too. I got in trouble for that too. I didn't really get in trouble. I was just told I couldn't do that anymore. And I didn't get detention or anything. But I know, again, business ownership, I guess. So, and then too, growing up, again, I would say in that maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 age frame, somewhere in there, I was pretty much always organizing um, events in my street neighborhood. I lived on a cul-de-sac and lots of kids on our street. And, I would set up that we would do like shows, and we would have character costumes and we'd make up invitations, and the other kids in the neighborhood and parents, we'd go around and, there'd be a charge, of course. It wasn't free, and they'd have to pay to come to the show. I also set up restaurants. I had one of those metal kitchens back in the day. I don't think they're metal anymore. I think they're all plastic for kids now. But I would set up a business, and I had my mom and dad help me. My dad set up the barbecue, and we did a restaurant. And I think we called it Tips Restaurant. And so we had hamburgers and salad, hot dogs and stuff. And so all the kids in the neighborhood would come and they'd pay to have their lunch. And we set up tables on our driveway and stuff. So again, that entrepreneurial spirit business piece was probably an early component in my life. And I guess in some respects, it was something I was already thinking about then that I wanted to do. So anyway, and then the next thing I remember, this would go on for a long time. I went on a summer vacation to spend time with my cousins, and the husband of my cousin, uh, he was a corporate lawyer, and so in the evening, I was there for like 2 or 3 weeks. So in the evening, he would tell us about what he worked on, and I was asking questions, and I was just really intrigued by this whole concept. So, I came home and I was going to be a corporate lawyer. That's what I wanted to do. And that was something I wanted to do until I was about 20, 21 years old. And so that's coming along in the rest of the story. So, first job. So, this is kind of where I think my career path starts, right? So, first jobs. So, the first job that I officially applied for at, I believe, age 16, so I had my car, I could drive. I applied at Baskin Robbins, and went for an interview, and it was like a group interview. There were like three or four of us on this interview, and the owner of the Baskin Robbins was showing us how we had to specifically use a technique to scoop ice cream. And you had to get your hip just right along the side of the ice cream container box, and then scooping. There was a definite technique to the scooping. Couldn't get too much, but you had to get your hip on the side and scoop accordingly. And I remember thinking, really? There's a scooping technique? And I was like, I don't know about this. This seems a little weird. So anyway, I guess maybe my concern for this specific style was aware to the guys. So I didn't get a call back. So I never worked at Baskin Robbins, but that was my first job interview. And again, I didn't get called back. Now, if he had called me back for a second interview, would I have and offered me a position, would I have taken it? I don't know. I kind of was really put off by this whole technique. He was so rigid about that. And I was like, so I don't know. But again, I think my career path started at Baskin Robbins, even though I didn't have the job there. So that summer, since I didn't have a job, paying job, my best friend's grandma worked at an insurance office, and she needed some help stuffing envelopes for all these mailings that they would do out to clients or potential clients or whatnot. So I said, okay, fine. I needed some money, right? So I just stuffed envelopes all summer long, and I think she paid me, $10 or something. I mean, it was pretty minimal, but it was a little bit of money. It helped with gas, right? So yeah, so I stuffed envelopes for a summer. So That'll come back in the story later too. And then my first job, really paid job that I consider my first, again, focus fitting into the career path component was working at Kmart. And if you're young enough that you don't know what Kmart is, you can look that up. But for those of you who do know Kmart, a few things you may remember about Kmart. So my job was working in the back office. And hopefully you remember the colored tags that were on clothing at Kmart. So one would be like a blue or a red. There was yellow and green. And I think there was one other color, and I want to say purple, but I may be wrong on that. Anyway, back in the day, they had a big computer box, about so wide, about so big, and it had a little keypad on it. The box was big, but the keypad was small, and there was a slot. And so my job was to go up to the cash registers, and there were little boxes at the cash registers where all of the sales people, register people, drop those tickets. They'd pull it off the clothes, drop it in the appropriate slot, blues, red, green, yellow. Anyways, my job was to go up with little brown lunch paper sacks, dump out those tickets from those bins, take them back to the back office, and I had to feed each one into this machine. So I'd feed it in, and then I had to enter in a code for that department, like an item number and the price. And this was what was registering, I guess, for the reconciliation with what was coming off the registers. I wasn't involved in that part. I just had to feed it. And then I started doing some invoicing with accounts payable coming in, all the invoices for the merchandise that the store was bringing in. So I had to enter those into the computer as well. So I enjoyed that job. It was fun. It was part time, right? But it was fun. I enjoyed it. And I made friends with the assistant general manager. Anyways, I really liked him, and I guess he liked me too. And so we, when I was on my way up to the register, we'd pass each other, hey, how you doing, and whatnot. And he was always nice to run into. And this was a lesson in it's who you know. So when it was busy season, primarily the holidays, right? Everybody in the store was expected to fill in at the registers for like a 30-minute, 1 hour thing while people were doing their lunch breaks. So we would be back up to fill in. And I was like, I just don't want to do this. I was never a customer service type person, and even now. But anyway, so we had to learn to work the register. And so I had to go up there a couple times. I had to do it, and I really did not like it. The customers were so difficult to deal with most of the time. So, anyways, one day I was picking up tickets and going through, the men's department or whatever to get back to the back office, and the assistant general manager comes by. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? And I'm like, well, I had to work the register this morning. I said, I really don't like that. I said, the customers are really difficult to work with. And he says, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I never had to work the register again. So it's who you know. But I enjoyed my Kmart job. It was good skill building, and it was really my first work with back office work. So the story begins, or the path begins, leading on to the rest of the story. So I always wanted to go to college. It was just something I always wanted to do, and I still had the mindset that I wanted to be a corporate lawyer. So college, I graduate, and I went to college right after graduation, and I went to a local college, a local private college. And so it was, I think in a lot of respects, this is kind of one of your first decisions as a young adult of, what are you going to study? What do you want to be? What's your career? What do you think you want to do? So I looked at what were my favorite subjects? What did I really enjoy doing? And my favorite subject ever since junior high was history. And I also really enjoyed business classes, which I did in high school. I did typing, I did accounting, and I really enjoyed those as well. I think there was a basic business class too that I took in high school, so I really enjoyed that. And I also enjoyed aspects of me having knowledge about something and being able to share that with somebody else. And that's what I liked or thought I liked about the corporate law aspect was here I would gain the knowledge as being a lawyer, I would know the law, but I could help people um, because I knew the law and I could help them with their issues and concerns, problems, by sharing that knowledge and knowing how to proceed on cases and whatnot. So that whole, helping others was always something that was important to me. And so I enjoyed aspects of that. And the other part was really just making connections. I always enjoyed connections of how this was related to that or um, how someone over here was involved with this over here. And maybe that comes from the history component, but I always enjoyed that type of activities as well. So when it came time to decide what I was going to do as a major, and for me back then, you picked a major. You didn't just go and not have one and just do your prerequisite classes. So my major was business administration, and my minor was in history because I loved history. So that's what my plan was going forward. So I thought, well, the best thing to do is try and get a part-time job with a lawyer. So I was able to find one. It was a family law practice. It was a single lawyer. And I liked the lawyer. He was a nice guy. And it was nearby my school, so it wasn't too far of a drive from school to there or from the office to school. So that worked out. So I did that, I want to say, for maybe about a year or so. And I found out very quickly that I didn't like the law. In terms of, again, the customer part, I think. The clients always seemed to make things so much more difficult than they had to be. And it was constantly, people calling or he said this or she said that. Tell the lawyer they said this. And I was like, oh boy, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. I seemed like it was, more trouble than helping is what it seemed to me. So I was like, I don't think I want to do this. And I was probably about 20 or so at that point, I want to say, 19, 20, somewhere in there. And so I thought, I'm going to look for a different kind of job. I got to do something a little bit different because I don't know that I want to be a corporate lawyer anymore. So as I said, I enjoyed my business classes in high school and accounting in particular. And I really, my business or excuse me, my business classes that I was picking were a lot of accounting because I enjoyed accounting. So I thought, well, I'm going to look for a different type of part-time job. So I was able to find some work for some financial institutions in their processing departments, not in the bank branches, but in their large facility banking processes where we were reconciling, balancing total ATMs out of a branch, credit card transactions, and balancing those. So it was a lot of reconciliation. And I loved that. I really enjoyed doing that. So that was a good part time job for me. And so I felt pretty good. I've got the business administration minor. I'm liking this kind of work. This all seemed great. So about this time was when my classes started to get a little bit harder in business administration. And I had done a Bachelor of Science is what I was doing. So I was going to have to take the hardest class in the business department, which was statistics. And it was one of those classes where everybody said, you know what, if you can pass, just pass. Don't shoot for the A or B, just pass the class. It is so hard. So I was not feeling too good about that. And it was about, I really think because of that, that I started to rethink my major. And I've really been enjoying my history classes. And I thought, maybe I need to switch this around. And so that's what I did. I switched from uh, a major business administration to a history major, but I kept the business and I was going to be a business administration minor with a focus on accounting. So it sounded like a great plan, and I was happy. So, what was I going to do with a history degree? I knew I loved history, but it was really teach. And I thought I wanted to teach high school. And I thought, college, I don't know that I want to do the master's, PhD thing to be able to teach college. I think I want to teach high school. So that's really what I geared my last 2 years of college on, was preparing to teach high school, and I needed to get a teaching credential. But I was going to do that under a graduate program. So I was going to pursue a master's in history, and I was going to get my teaching credential at the same time so that I could teach history. And so that was the new path, new plan. And then I decided to go out of state for grad school. And so summer after I graduated college in July, my parents, my brother, they helped me move, and we moved across country, or I moved across country to stay with family. And I had my own place though, and that's another story. I'll have to add that to my list of stories. I had a mobile home trailer, so that's a story to come. So anyway, so while I was doing my first year of grad school, I decided, well, maybe I'll go back to the law. I knew how to do the office administration, so I did that and worked for the lady lawyer this time. And I want to say it was a family law practice also. And maybe that was my mistake in doing family law, but it was pretty much the same thing. And a lot of bickering, a lot of fighting, and I just didn't feel like there was a lot of help going on. So I did that for a little while, and then I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so I found a back office position for a hotel near the university that I was attending. And that worked out great. I was again in the back office. I was doing accounting type work, accounts receivable, accounts payable. I enjoyed that type of work also, so that was great. And again, another story on another video, but I only did a year of grad school and ended up moving back to the community that I grew up in. And so it was, now what am I going to do? And it really was, am I going to continue to look for something in doing teaching and whatnot? And I really decided that I didn't want to teach. And I felt more comfortable with the business. So I set that aside. So it really was, okay, career. Now what am I going to do? I don't want to teach. I've decided that I want to do something in business. What am I going to do? And it was about the same time that my parents had moved, decided to move where they had moved to, and stayed with them for a short period of time and started working again for a hotel in the back office, doing accounting, business administration work, which was all good. I enjoyed that. And then a unique opportunity came up, I thought was a unique opportunity, in working for a very prominent nonprofit organization, which was very well known in the community in which I lived. And it was kind of a business angle to it. It was working or managing their donor management system, so their database of donors, and doing mailings and entering donations. So, like I say, it kind of had a business administration component, but it also had the money side of it in terms of the accounting and keeping track of that and whatnot. So I took the position, and my career started then. So my career has really focused on providing services, whether as a staff member or ultimately in business of my own for nonprofit organizations. And so that's where my career has been. So at this particular nonprofit, my duties and responsibilities continued to grow. So as I said, I started off working on the database. Then there was a staffing change, and so I took over the accounting for the organization. And I started to oversee staff who were now doing the donor management system. I was helping with coordinating the large fundraising event, and really spending more and more time dealing with fundraising, which for me, you know, I didn't know that that's what that was. I mean, I knew the name of it and whatnot, but I really didn't understand that there was positions specifically for just fundraising. So I was learning as well. So there was the business administration, the finance component, but then there was this fundraising component, which I was really enjoying. And they ended up hiring their first specific position for fundraising for the organization because it had always kind of been done by different people on staff. And anyways, so I was having to work with him, providing this, you know, support and whatnot, and helping with pulling financial information and whatnot for grants, helping, continuing to help with the special events, which I really enjoyed. And anyways, he came to me one day and he said, you know, I think you have a lot of skills and talent that would go a long way if you were to pursue a specific position in fundraising with nonprofits. And I thought, oh, asking people for money? I don't know if I want to do that. And you'll hear that from a lot of people who get into fundraising initially. But I thought, you know, he's kind of right. I enjoy all these components of this. Maybe that's, you know, maybe he's right. Maybe I should listen to him. And he'd been doing it professionally prior to arriving at this particular organization for, gosh, probably 15 years or so at that point. So anyway, I decided to take his advice. And I looked for positions with nonprofits in the area that were specifically fundraising positions. And so that's where I ended up focusing my career in fundraising for nonprofits. And I was on staff for various nonprofits in our area for about 8 years, and I really enjoyed the work, the grant writing, working with the different fundraising campaigns, the special events, and I worked with a couple different organizations on staff, and again, really did enjoy it. And this particular gentleman, he continued to be my mentor through my whole nonprofit fundraising specific career until I had been doing it for quite some time. And, you know, he kind of went off and was doing his own thing, but we always stayed in touch. So I really was thankful for his suggestion, advice, and guidance over the years because it really did make a difference in my life. So, as I said, I worked on staff for 8 years with nonprofit organizations and with a primary focus with fundraising. And I was very involved in my professional association and a lot of networking events and whatnot. And I really started to see a lot of nonprofits were really struggling with the fundraising because they couldn't afford to hire a fundraiser primary only staff position. They were paid pretty well. And so I really just noticed that there was a real need in the local communities and just regionally for these nonprofits who really needed help with fundraising. And so it was then that I decided that I was going to start my own business and I was going to tailor my services specifically to small nonprofits to help them with their fundraising, you know, as well as some business administration and finance, since I had done that type of work as well. And so that's what I set my business out to do. And my goal with that was really, you know, I wanted a part time situation and I wanted to provide my services on an as needed basis so that they really could benefit from the knowledge and skills that I had acquired so far in my career. And they could benefit from that and be a little more successful with their programs. So that's what I focused on. And long story short there, because I'll probably, you know, do a video specifically on that, just about being a business owner. And two, I should say, you know, my intent was never to have employees. It was just going to be me part-time, working here and there, and helping organizations where I could. But this past August 2025 was my 20-year anniversary of owning my own business. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been a great career, and I really have enjoyed being of service to area nonprofits in my local community and in my region. And so I really am thankful for that opportunity that I've had, and the different organizations and the people that I have worked with over the years. And throughout my work with, the nonprofits, and it's been 28 years now, both on staff and then, owning my own business, I never stopped being involved in history. And I wanted to make a point of sharing that. Some of the organizations that I worked for were history oriented, and I also, even though it wasn't business part of my business or my work, I always continued to be involved in history, whether it was my hobbies that I was doing related to history, or what I was reading, or the places I went and visited when I went on vacation. So history was always a part of my life, even though my career wasn't specifically focused on history, going back to that major. But I always kept it near me, and I was involved in it in some way or another. And as I say, some of the organizations I worked with were history organizations. And it's been in the last 6 years that I have adjusted my business so that I primarily just do work with history organizations. And I do some work in the history field outside of nonprofit. Um, so, full circle back to the history. History was always something I loved, and it was always a part of my life in some way. But ultimately, my career has a tie in to history, and I really do continue to enjoy that work, both professionally in history and museums, but also in my free time. So I'm pleased that it worked out that way. And so it just kind of goes to show that, your career path may go different ways. Some people may have a straight path. Some may be a little curvy. I think mine was a little curvy. I don't think I ever really got off the path entirely, but it was curvy. Some have a bumpy road, and that's okay. Some have a pretty off-road adventure. And then some career paths are like being on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. You're all over the place. But you know what? It's all good. And I think that's where the life lessons come from, is through that experience, that journey, that path, off-road or straight or curvy. And I'm happy to share some of those as the closing on my video of the lessons I think I learned along my career path. So the first thing about lessons learned on the career path, try new things. And that's how you find out what you like and what you don't like. I found out I really wasn't all that excited about scooping ice cream, even though they didn't call me back. So, but don't get me wrong, I love Baskin Robbins ice cream. I still go there, so no hard feelings. But I didn't want to scoop ice cream with my hip on the thing, and that just was too much. Customer service, I was didn't really like the retail sales of customer service. Certainly in the work that I do, it's very customer service oriented in terms of clients, your donors, people who visit museums, things of that nature. So, but working a cash register and working in retail was not something I liked. And so I think the life lesson is that you got to try new things on your career path, and find out what you like and what you don't like. Take it as research, so to speak. You're trying different things, and you find out, I don't like that, but I like this. So maybe the next job that you take is a little more geared to the things that you like. And that you're kind of tailoring and learning as you go. And I think that's very important, because your path doesn't need to be straight. I think you need some diversity, some variety of experience, because it all comes back around. So, as a reminder, stuffing envelopes. Working for nonprofits, you will stuff a lot of envelopes, and I have done more than my fair share, but I've always enjoyed stuffing envelopes. But I learned that in a summer, somewhat job, stuffing envelopes for an insurance company, right? So those experiences, the things you learn along the way, come back around, and you can always say, oh, I've done that. I know how to do that, or you have a basis to grow from on that. So try lots of different things and find out what you like and what you don't like. And a big life lesson is do what you like. Find your passion, because you're going to spend a lot of your time working. So you should really enjoy what it is that you're doing. Finding a job or a career that's aligned with your passion is a real benefit. And I think we all should strive for that. But sometimes that doesn't work out. So you really need to enjoy what you're doing. I don't think we should settle for things we're unhappy with. I don't think it's good for us in a variety of ways: health, mental health, quality of work. So really try to do the things you enjoy doing, and if you're fortunate, to do the things you're passionate about. So don't forget about those. And in my case, as an example, I never let the history go. That was my passion. It's always been my passion. I never let it go. It may have been a hobby that I was doing while I was working, doing something else, or I may have volunteered. I did those things when I went on vacation. It never went away. And for me, I ultimately found a way for me to be able to do history related work in my career. And I'm very thankful and appreciative that I was able to do that. So don't forget your passion. The other life lesson that I learned, and I was fortunate again for this, is the value of having a mentor or mentors. I had a couple in my career development, and I am very appreciative. You know, a lot of times we have a vision, or we think we know where we're going, why we're doing what we're doing, the type of work we're doing. And sometimes it takes somebody outside of our family, and in my case, a mentor, a colleague, or a coworker, saw something in me that he thought would be very beneficial to a fundraising career. And he spoke up, shared those with me, and I was hesitant at first, but he prompted some interest in me, and I would ask more questions and paid a little more attention to the type of work we were doing, and trying to decide, well, maybe he's right. Maybe this is what I would like to do. So having a mentor, I think, provides a lot of valuable resources, insight, guidance, and encouragement. So take advantage of opportunities that come along for you to have a mentor. And by the same token, I think another life lesson is share what you have learned. Just like a mentor may have shared with you, return the favor. Share what you know about your career, your job with others, so that they too can learn. And keep an eye out for those you think might have specific skills and qualifications in a particular area, and maybe make some suggestions on they might want to consider this, or maybe look into that. So repay the favor and be a mentor down the road if you have that opportunity to do that. One other life lesson is, from my experience, it's not about the money. It's about, again, if you're fortunate, being able to find a career, a vocation that is your passion or what you really enjoy doing. Sometimes the money doesn't follow that. And certainly you need a certain amount of money to live and expenses and whatnot, but sometimes your career and job decisions need to be more focused on what you enjoy, what you're passionate about. And from my perspective and my experience, being of service to others and helping a greater good or a greater community goes a long way in your life, and specifically to a life well lived, in that you're able to help others, whether you're sharing your knowledge and your skills, or you're helping them grow in the work that they're doing, or how their lives may improve from the work or the service that you're providing to them. I think that is ultimately the most important thing in our career paths, is being of service to others. And again, sometimes the money doesn't follow that. And my belief, and the way that I have focused my business and my career, is money was always secondary to that. And I'll probably elaborate on that a little bit in another video when I talk a little bit about my business specifically. But life lesson that I have learned, and I think many others too. So if you're just entering the career path, keep that in mind. I'd like to end this video with two ideas. One, as I was kind of thinking through, what I wanted to talk about on my video today, I was getting a visual. I have the timeline, and as a history person, timelines are just a natural skill, I think, right? But I had a timeline, of how my career developed over the years, curving this way and that way. But, I think I might just sit down and do a little drawing and a little coloring and draw a visual of what my career path looks like. And it may be a path, but I'm thinking, again, maybe tying into history, it may be a tree. And from the very beginnings of, doing the events on my neighborhood, on my front lawn, selling school supplies in elementary school, whatever it may be, those are the roots, right? And the roots get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger as you grow up and you try new things. And you think, no, 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 I don't like this. I'm going to move this way. And it makes me think of a large tree with a lot of roots that are growing and growing till you have a good strong base, and you branch and you go up and you branch out into different things, and it becomes a full bloom of a tree, so to speak. And that's kind of the visual I have. So I might just draw that. So you might want to do that as well. If you've had a career, and I'm 50 something, how do you visualize, or how would you draw your career path? And if you're new to this and you're just getting started, good luck to you. I wish you all the best. And maybe start drawing your tree or your path now. And my last thought was something that my husband shared with me. Oh, it's probably been about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. He got me a card that said, "You're on the right path." And on the inside it says, "Because that's your path. You're on your path." So good luck to everybody. I hope those of us that have had the careers, made good choices, learned a lot of things along the way, that you share those. You share your skills and abilities with others, maybe as a mentor. And if you're new, just coming up, again, best of luck to you. And I hope some of the information I shared today will be of value to everyone. So thanks for joining me on the porch. I'm Sweet Melba. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.